Hey y'all, welcome to Parent Empowerment with Mandy Drogin. I'm Mandy. I'm just a mom sitting down with real moms and dads having real conversations about what's going on in our schools. And today I'm joined by an all-star cast. First, we have Representative Shawn Thierry from the Houston area who's going to talk to us about what she's seen both as a legislator and as a mom of one. Then we have Miss Angie Thibodeaux, who is an author. She runs a nonprofit for affordable housing. She is also a mom of one. And finally, Dr. Richard Johnson, the director of the Booker T. Washington Initiative, a father of four, a grandfather of one. And we are going to open it up today talking about what is going on in our inner city schools. Representative Thierry, can you tell me, what are you seeing in Houston? What are you hearing from parents?
Well, thank you for having me. It's a lot to unpack. We're seeing things on multiple levels that are very, very concerning to parents. Issues with lack of reading proficiency, lack of math proficiency, lack of options for going to a better school. We're seeing parental concerns about the actual content that's in the school that they know nothing about. Certain types of materials, books, things that parents would never ever purchase in maybe a million years for their kids to read. However, their taxpayer dollars are going towards it and they know nothing about it and they have no say-so in the matter. We're hearing about challenges to curriculum. So there's so much. There's so much. And my position is, these kids deserve better and the parents deserve better.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's talk about you as a mom. Now that we've talked about you as a state rep.
It's my best job.
Yes, that's right.
That's right.
Same. So tell me about your experience with your daughter and how, you saw what was going on and how you, like every single parent, just want what is best for your child.
Yes. Well, so my daughter's Claire. She's 11 now. She's a rising sixth grader. I found out that's the term when they're going to sixth grade. She's a rising sixth grader. And we have had a very interesting educational journey so far. We've moved around a lot, from public school to private school, back to public school. And it looks like for this upcoming semester, we'll be back at private school. But before I say that, I'll say I always give the disclaimer, I'm the product of the public school system. I attended from 1st through 12th grade, all public schools in Houston. I'm the daughter of a public school teacher. My mom was an English teacher and a guidance counselor for over 50 years.
Wow. That's
right.
amazing.
Yeah, over 50 years. So Claire started off at a public magnet school, a little bit outside of my district, but she was able to go there because she was deemed gifted, talented. So that gave her access to one of these top schools. Mm-hmm. Had she not, she would have had to go to the school in the neighborhood, which is interesting enough, the school that I went to. But that school is no longer the same school. It was an exemplary school at the time. Now the reading proficiency, Dr. Johnson, Angie's, I think under 25%.
Under 25% of children? Oh, my goodness.
On grade level.
That's heartbreaking. And we know if kids can't read on grade level by the third grade, there's a 97% chance, or guarantee, as I call it, that they will never catch up. That's heartbreaking.
That's awful. So we put her there, and she was there for a couple of years. She did very well. And then the COVID pandemic hit. So we got to factor that in as well. So she went to the virtual learning, which was really a struggle because she learned virtually for a whole year with a lady she'd never met in person, a teacher she'd never met. She didn't know the students. Fortunately, I was able to be home with her and pick up the slack. So she didn't have that deficiency that I saw, that what we saw even in legislative findings and everybody saw statewide, that there was this huge fall off of kids who had to learn virtually. But we didn't go back because the principal changed and there was a big upheaval at the school because of the pandemic. Teachers left. It was just a melee of disaster. So we went to a private school. Did great there, much smaller environment, 14 kids. It was a Catholic school, St. Mary's of the Purification, well-known Catholic school. I'll give a shout out. I think Beyonce went there. I heard
nice.
the one and only Beyonce.
Yes.
So it's in a historically African-American neighborhood in 3rd Ward that I actually represent. And she did very well there for a while. But then they had some challenges with funding. Principal left again. They started really struggling with enrollment. And all of that impacted their ability to teach and for the kids to learn. So I saw that happening. So we left. And then we went back to a public school. She was able to get in again through her GTA status.
To the magnet school again?
Magnet school, yeah,
Okay.
IB school. And that's where she's been for the past 2 years. And she did great. She's a straight A student. But the first year, I will tell you, it took a lot, even at this top public school, you all, it took a lot of parental involvement. I started noticing that she wasn't being taught in the traditional way that maybe we all learned or what I expected. There was a lot of this, what they call peer-to-peer learning.
Okay.
Where, I don't know if anyone's heard of it. Yeah, where, let's say they're learning fractions that day. And the teacher may go up to the board and give the concept and say, today we're going to be learning fractions. And the teacher is allowed to maybe put 1 or 2 examples on the board and then give them a worksheet, or they go on their laptop. And then the kids that master it quickly can move on to something else really quickly, and the other kids can have to stay behind, but they don't get to work with the teacher. The kids that master it are responsible for teaching the other kids how to, you've heard of that?
Yes.
This peer-to-peer thing. And so my daughter started telling me, she's like, Mom, I don't like that. She said, because one, the other kids don't want to do it.
Right.
She's like, some of them that really get it are like, well, why should I tell you? There's competition.
Sure.
They're like, figure it out yourself. And so, and then she kind of felt like, and why would I want to tell them I don't really know, and they don't know each other? All of those things went on. So I did have a couple of meetings with the principal, and I talked about that. And I said, what I'm looking for is a little bit more hands-on approach with instruction from her teacher. And he told me something very interesting. He said, well, we have a different philosophy now. And he said, what you're looking for, I believe, Ms. Thierry, is what we call chalk talk. And I was like, okay, what's that? Right, yeah. What is that? And he said, well, I'm sure when you were in 5th grade or 4th grade, your teacher went up to the board and she wrote with chalk and she explained the concepts to the students.
She taught the kids.
Yes. I was like, okay, I think that's called teaching. Yeah, I think that's called teaching. Yeah. And I said, yes. I said, that reminds me of when I still remember my 3rd grade teacher. Her name was Mrs. Freiler at Patton F. Elementary, still around. And she taught longitude and latitude. Not that I use it in my everyday life, but I still know it.
But you know it.
I learned it. I learned longitude and latitude. And she did go up to the board and she chalk talked, right? Dr. Johnson, she chalk talked. And it was very informative. It kept me, I was riveted, right? So I learned. And he said, we now consider that the lowest form of learning.
What?
The lowest form of teaching and the lowest form of learning. And he said, similar to how he was saying, like, we're not sold on phonics anymore.
What?
Like, that's not always the way to go. So I was like, oh, okay. So, and again, that's, I don't know if that's statewide. From what I found out, because the school does have high test scores, they get some exemptions with their curriculum, and that's a statewide thing. I was like, I'm a state rep. I got to look into that. But because they do so well, they don't have to follow, they kind of get exempt from certain guidelines. I mean, they still obviously have to master the subjects, but there's different approaches. And since they were an IB school, he basically told me it was a little bit of what we would call like a Montessori style.
Okay.
Which I've heard can be helpful, but it was, in my opinion, a very loosey-goosey, and it required that first year I had to do about an hour and a half to almost 2 hours of follow-up.
Yeah.
So you were chalk talking in your home.
I was chalk talking at home. Yeah, we had to go through everything because
it works.
Right.
And then the last part I'll throw out there, and y'all just tell me what your experience is with this. There was also this kind of concept that homework is not traditional homework anymore. that there are schools now, public schools, where the homework is the work that was my concept of homework is that it's a review of what you were taught.
Sure, correct.
Now, sometimes homework is a case of first impression. For example, you're seeing it for the first time when you get home. And so I was like, well, how are they supposed to know how to do it? And surely, so I was like, is this homeschool? Right. So my daughter starts saying, I feel like I'm being homeschooled. She's like, I'm doing double duty. She's like, because I go to school here and then you homeschool me all night. I was like, well, you don't really know what's on this worksheet. How would you know how to do it? I said, did y'all go over it at all? Now, I did go back and talk about that, and it was confirmed to me, well, that's not really supposed to be the case, but sometimes it happens. And so my thought was, well, what about the parents that can't do that?
Correct.
Right? Maybe they have 3 kids, or maybe they don't understand it either.
That's right.
You bring up some good points. I mean, all good points. I have similar situation, but it varies in so many different ways. What I want people to understand is that there's so much out there. There's so many options out there. You have public school, you have charter school, you have private school, you have religious-based schools, you have all of these schools. But the one thing that me as a parent want for my child is just a good quality education. That's all I want, just a good quality education. And what was not happening with Major's 11, and he's one of these aspiring 6th graders too, and it's just by coincidence we have 2 11-year-olds, but he is 11, and he is so unique, lovely little boy, very, very shy to some, but not to me. And one of the things that was happening in the school that Major was in, the teacher told me he's not engaging. He's quiet, he's reserved, and I took it with a grain of salt because I thought, okay, he's just shy. He don't want to be the first to raise his hand. He don't want to do this, he don't want to do that. And so, lo and behold, unbeknown to me, we go on, we fast forward, and Major's not doing so well because he's not engaging, he's not participating, he's not doing this, that, and the other. And so he gets home, and then when I pick him up, he's in the car, and he's talking my ear off and telling me, oh, the teacher does this, he can emulate the teacher, he talks like him, little comedian and everything. And I'm like, well, wait a minute, this goes totally against what I'm hearing the teacher say and what you're saying. And the teacher's not really telling me this. This is me looking at progress reports and me looking at the notes that are in the backpack or whatever. I'm a backpack mom. I dig in the backpack. I'm taking a deep dive. I'm finding Lego men, Matchbox cars and everything, the Pokemon cards. I'm finding everything. So I'm that mom. And so if nothing else that COVID taught me, I come, and you gotta understand, we want the best for our kids. I would give my life for Major, and he knows it. And I want the best for him. I want him to have what I didn't have. I am a public school child. I'm the little perfect attendance kid every year, and then I ended up going to an HBCU, Grambling State. I love Grambling State. I love HBCUs. Several degrees. I have got my master's, and I'm thinking I'm going to have my baby, and the one thing I'm going to give him is a good education, and he'll have more. This will be the doctor. That's
the American dream, right?
Yeah, this will be Dr. Thibodeaux, and he'll be the first one in the family, and doing this and doing that. Only to find out later on, in COVID taught me something. When Major came home, and Mom had to be the teacher, I found out he wrote a little differently. He read differently, and he would read to me at home when he was at school, and we would look over his homework, and his homework was done, and all of this was checked off, and everything was fine. But COVID taught me one thing. He wasn't reading on the level that he was supposed to read on, and he was writing his words backwards, his D's and B's, his P's and Q's, and his N's, and even his R's were looking a little different. And I just looked at that and I said, wait a minute. Now we're stuck at home. We're in COVID. Right. We're homebound. So I picked up the phone, start talking to the teacher and everything, and they say, well, yeah, we noticed that too, but he has to just continue to practice, and they're drawing on these papers and tracing letters and things like this. Fast forward, had him tested, come to find out he's dyslexic.
All that time.
And remember, you got to remember this. He's missed some of those early years third grade and fourth grade where we could get this thing under control. Yeah. But that's not even beside the point. Now that we know, what do we do about it? And now we're in COVID, and the school doesn't have the instructional materials and the teachers that are necessary to give him the education he needs. So here it is now, mom working shift 1, now have to work shift 2, and after hours become the subject matter expert and give him what he needs to thrive. And I did it with a badge of honor because now I'm looking at, my son looks up at me, and if any parent has ever heard this, and I'm like, okay, we got to get this homework done. Let's get it done. You got to do your math, but Major, you got to read the story. You got to get something out of this story. Here are the questions. I'm going to ask you the questions. Answer them from what you read and everything. And he just looked, and he looked at me with them beautiful eyes and say, just tears, Mom, why can't you just do it for me? Mm-hmm. And I'm like, because that's not right. I've read my story in school. You need to read yours. And he said, don't you get it? I don't get this. He didn't get it. He didn't get it. And he's crying, and I'm just boohooing.
You're making me cry.
Yeah, and I'm boohooing because I want him to get it, and I'm reading the story, and I said, okay, let's start over. I'll read you the story, and then you go from there, and we'll answer the questions. And I'm reading him the story. Major found a point on the wall that was more interesting than the story that I was reading. Anything but what I was reading. And I was like, don't you want to know how this ends? So what I did, I took the story and started making it for him. I started putting, instead of using names that the book had, I used
Pokemon characters in there.
It was Spider-Man. Believe it or not, it was Spider-Man.
Friends and family.
Oh my goodness, no, he can give a flip about that. But you talk about Spider-Man, and you talk about Batman, and all of the Dark Knight, and you got his attention right there. And so that's what I did. And so now I said, let's answer the questions. He answered them perfectly. And so with a little bit of help and a little bit of time, we got that under control. But let's fast forward out of COVID. Yep. And I found out, based on where I live, I'm supposed to take Major to a certain school. Well, I looked at the school. And when I started talking to the school about materials and this, that, and the other, wasn't going to happen. They didn't have that. Well, we can give the information to you and let you do it. But wait a minute, I'm not the teacher. Mm-hmm. Right. And what I did learn in COVID is Major, and I'm not saying that he's unique. I'm sure a lot of parents deal with this out there. Major looks at me as mom. I'm never going to be teacher.
That's right.
Even though I run experiments on him every day. I am never going to be teacher. So when I'm giving him the lessons and going through the cue cards and the flashcards and, what's 4 times 4 and, and all of this, I'm still mom. Mm-hmm. And he has a right to choose to say, you know what, Mom, we've had enough. Come, let's do this, Mom. You know what? You looked exceptionally beautiful today. You can say exceptionally beautiful to me. And guess what? I was putting in his hands. I was like, okay, we'll do it. Yeah, we'll do it tomorrow. And I'm like, sucker, big fool tattooed on my forehead, y'all.
Just mama. That's it. I mean, it's mama. It's our right. It's our babies. Because you said you would die for your child.
I'd give my
as
life
everyone here, myself included, and I hear that all the time, and that transcends the street you live on, your race, your income. That is what every parent feels. And you women are exceptionally well educated, well established in booming careers, and you all know how to do it. And so really, that's what a parent empowerment is about, is empowering parents, every parent, regardless of their level of income, regardless of their level of academic achievement. They should be empowered to make sure that their child, because they love their kids just as much as we do. But you really touched on something that hits home, and we're going to get raw here, because I'm going to go over to Dr. Richard Johnson, who has started prison ministries throughout Louisiana and Texas. He has worked in the prison system. And one of the things that Dr. Johnson really talks about is that school to prison pipeline.
It's real.
And dyslexia, and how these undiagnosed learning disorders that we can fix, or at least we can know how to deal with. We can help these children. Right. And this is something that I really want you to talk about, Dr. Johnson, is that school to prison pipeline that we're seeing, particularly in our minority communities, these kids that are zoned for these failing schools, these kids who, like your son, They just say, oh, he'll figure it out or he'll get there. We'll just pass him. It doesn't matter if that 25% of the kids are reading on grade level. We'll just move them up. Dr. Johnson, tell us about this.
Thank you, Mandy, for having me on the show. That's the reason why I got into this fight.
Yep.
You know, I came back from the Army in 1988 to Houston, and I was born in 5th Ward on Lockwood Drive and raised, my parents then moved to Pleasantville, which is right down the street. And I noticed that a lot of our young boys, I opened up a drug treatment facility to save young black males. And and I noticed that once the kids would come in, and we were able to put them in a teaching environment that really honed in, small classroom, honed in on them. These young guys who had been adjudicated now turned into young scholars.
Yep.
Yeah.
And so that prompted me to look at the fact, number one, you know, I have 4 kids. Right? You know, I have 2 boys, 2 girls. And I love children. And I tell people, say, well, you know, I love children too. I say, yeah, but you can't outlove me with mine.
That's right.
And I can't outlove you with yours.
That's right.
You
That's
know,
right.
if someone is standing on the other side of the door and they say, and me and my 4 kids are in a room, and they say, okay, one person got to come out and die so the other 4 can live. Well, I'm going to be the one walk out that door.
Right. That's right.
You know, for my kids.
That's right.
And so, but I also learned to generalize that love to all children. And I want for every kid what my kid gets. And so one of the things I learned is I have to stop these young black males from going to prison. And so that's when I started doing research on the school to prison pipeline. I have 2 boys, 2 girls. So I have to grow up some really good young men to be decent young men so that someday that they'll marry someone, have a family, and they'll treat them decently. Then I have 2 young ladies that I have to grow them up to be nice young ladies, and I'm looking for good young men to marry.
That's
them.
Right.
You know, so I looked at the disproportionality of young black males in the judiciary system, and so I did some research on that, and I found out that 70% of the folks that are in Texas criminal justice system right now are reading below a 4th grade level. And of
Say that again, please.
70% of those folks who are incarcerated in TDCJ now are reading below a 4th grade level. And 80% of that 70% were detected to have some form of dyslexia once they got to prison.
There it is.
See, so this was never identified in their public schools. I went to a public school. I'm a product of a public school, but I would not send my children to the public schools that I went to.
Yeah.
Simply because back in mid-60s and all the way through 79, the schools were different. The teachers were different.
The teachers were different.
They chalk taught.
Right. The curriculum, the method, all of it was different.
And they kept talking until you got it.
Until you got it. You see what I mean?
They wouldn't let up on us.
And so really, I got into this fight because of more of a stop the incarceration of young black males and stop the death of young black males, and also create a healthy family for the African American community. And so my focus was on how do I fix this problem? And so once I found out the problem was identified in the early childhood areas of public schools, now how do we fix that? So it's so very difficult to fix that public school situation. We have parents who are putting their kids in a zip code where they have an aunt or a grandmother or somebody else in the family in a zip code where a good school is, when they actually live over here, but they're trapped in their zip codes.
They used to get criminally prosecuted for that.
Yes.
Exactly. But they did it anyway.
Right.
They
It was
did
worth
it
it.
anyway.
Desperation.
They were
gonna
willing to
continue
walk
to
through
do
that
it.
door.
Absolutely. And who would not do
They're
it?
going
That's
to
right.
continue to do
They're
it.
going to
Who
continue.
would
It's
not
not
do
going to
it?
stop.
And I had a young man that came to me, and I would only see bad boys, tough boys that were adjudicated. But this one young man came to me from Coke Street Apartments in Fifth Ward, and that was a notorious place. I mean, murders all the time. And he came to me when he was 13. His mom put him into my center in my school, and he said, I want him to be here because he's doing this, he's doing that, he's doing these bad things, right? So, but he looked like a nice, quiet young kid, right? So after about 2 or 3 weeks, because he lived there, they lived on campus. So after about 2 or 3 weeks, he came into my office. He said, Mr. Johnson, I'm gonna have to be honest with you. He said, I don't do any of those things my mom said. She just said that so I could be placed over here.
Oh my God.
And he said, because 2 people had gotten killed in our apartment, and she was afraid for me.
Yeah, of course.
So she told you I did those things, but I really don't do any of those things. He said, I know you may kick me out. But I said, no way, man. I kept him for the next year. But
she wanted you to mentor him.
He was honest,
Yeah.
and he's a great young man this day. And most of those young boys, they just needed a safe environment, a nurturing environment, and an environment that was about learning. Because I was a little strict too, because I was an Army sergeant. So I mean, that military part came out, but it was tough love, and they loved the discipline. But the point I want to drive home here for these mothers, sometimes it's a life and death situation. If you're in a zip code and you're locked into a certain zip code, that's the school to prison pipeline. Absolutely. And you're not getting the services that you need. Why shouldn't we, as free Texans, we're Americans, we're free. Why shouldn't we be able to take our children wherever they can be best served and suited for whatever learning style that they may have?
We should.
Because when teaching style meets learning style, the magic happens.
It happens.
You see? So why shouldn't we not fight for that?
That's right.
And that's what I like about you, lady. I love you to death, Mandy. I mean, we're total partners in this fight. But I'm loving to see Angie, and I'm loving to see Representative Thierry in this fight, because look, yes, you know, I could save my kids, but what about my nieces and nephews? Right. What about my cousins? What about other people who are in my community
but have you
that
noticed,
I grew up in?
It seems like, Dr. Johnson, that this, to your point about when you say, well, where are the options? This seems to kind of almost be the only area where, meaning it's just a cookie cutter formula where every child is the same.
That's how they're seen.
And right. And so the approach is that way. And I'm not blaming anyone, but that's how it is now, even in 2024. So therefore, Claire and Major at that particular school, I guess would have been treated the same, even though they're very different kids.
Very different.
And but at the same time, Claire is also very shy too.
See.
And so my daughter's quiet, but not at home, like you said. But she does not thrive in large environments. That's just her personality. And it doesn't mean that school can solve everything, but I did learn that if she is in too large of an environment, she will almost shut down. And she's just not comfortable there. And so I met with parents in my district that started telling me similar stories. And I met a grandmother who's raising.
Tell us some of those stories.
Yeah, a grandmother whose daughter passed away, and she was now raising 3 kids. She had a 9th grader, she had a 5th grader, and she had like a 2nd grader. All 3 of the kids, this is a tough grandmama. I'm so proud of her. She put them in 3 different, one was at a private, one was at a public charter, and one was at a traditional public.
And you know what?
Because all 3 of them needed 3 different things.
I'm going to tell you something. That's a perfect example. Mandy, I tell people all the time, you know, I have one kid with 4 different personalities. All 4 of them are different. I mean, they learn different, they talk different, they walk different, their expectations are different. And then sometimes they rival one another, you know, and they compete against one another because they are very, very different.
She asked me, who are you to tell me? We were talking nicely, but she did just at one point say, who are you to tell me whether, her middle grandchild can go to a charter school that specializes in STEM for girls, that is that particular child's interest, and that's the best environment for her, that's keeping her focused and putting her on the pathway to be an engineer. She goes, why would you?
You as in a state rep. She meant, right. I need to meet this grandma.
She said, why would you? Why would?
Right.
And I was like, well, I'm not.
And
then she said, and who are you to say that the grandson, the higher level, didn't deserve to be at the all boys academy, private school?
But
where he was.
You know what though? And that's what I love about.
Like, not me.
No. But that's what I love about.
But you're going to get accused of it.
But let me tell you, that's what I love about you is the fact that, you know, you're as a legislator, your love for children spilled over into your legislative work. And to note, when you saw those books and that explicit sexual material in those books,
parent mode,
even the parent went straight into parent mode. But the unfortunate thing is that the party that you were in, or you are in, was so powerful that there were other parents who wanted to be in parent mode, who were legislators, would not speak up, but you did. And of course they came after you for that, but God bless you for doing that. And God bless you for standing in the face of tyranny and of wrath to stand up for right. And if you want to elaborate on that.
I just say we cannot politicize our children. They're not political pawns. At some point, you know we draw lines in the sand on many issues, but when it comes to kids, we have to do better. We cannot say, oh, you know what? For example, if there was a bill that came forward next session that says we want to get this testing for kids to see if they're dyslexic. I can assure you, though, depending on the person's name that's on the bill and what particular party they're in, the support is going to change depending on whose name is on the bill.
That's going to
upset
I see you want to weigh in on it.
You almost need a ghostwriter.
I'll come all unglued about that.
But there are people that would say, hey, you know what? I would be for that if the bill was filed by a person in my party, but because it's an opposing person, someone else I don't like, or who takes another position on an entirely different issue, they're going to kill it, try to kill it. They would say, well, you know what, maybe they're just trying to label these kids. And, all sorts of other counter arguments will come out and say, we don't really want them tested, do we? What if they label them and then they hold major back? And so a whole another just thread of talking points, Mandy, if you will, comes out of it.
That's right.
But it's actually politically motivated. And so you would find yourself saying, oh my God.
You'd find me at the Capitol. And let me tell you something. I don't know how much time we have.
As much
Parents, we have to vote better. We have to look into the people we're putting in place to make educational decisions, to make decisions for my household. You can't not tell me what's best for my household. You can't even tell me about my son. For those for the legislators who are making these decisions, his name is Major. He's a great little boy. He aspires to be a doctor. He aspires to be an engineer. He aspires to be an astronaut. You cannot do that to him. Just like I stopped them from mapping me to the school that I live. Don't map me to a school where I live, because I live where I can afford. But my child needed special attention. My child needed hands-on. And I researched, come hell to high water, I researched every school until I found the school. It is not the greatest school. It is not the elitist of the elite, but it's good for Major and it's good for his needs. And every parent out there, you know your kids, just like the young lady with the 3 kids, they all have special needs. They all have different needs. They're different individuals. And I searched that school, and yes, it was a charter school, and it was the best school to give Major what he needed to thrive. You know what Major is doing right now? He's on the basketball team. He plays football. He's on the track team, and he's on the debate club, and he has a TikTok Bible ministry on his own, where he, by the way, is reading chapters in the Bible. He's reading books in the Bible. And that is an example of what you do when you give me options. I can go to Taco Bell today and they're going to ask me, what choices do I want to have? Right. I can go to Popeye's Chicken and they're going to say white meat or dark meat. You can talk about marijuana all day. It's how we say it. Say marijuana, ganja, Dutchie, whatever. You have these,
CBD,
whatever.
Right.
Cannabis, it's how you say it. It's what you're saying. It's the choices of our words. So I want you to understand the words that are coming out of my mouth. Our kids are not for sale. They are not.
That's
with
right.
this, there's no debate. I deserve the options to choose for my son. I deserve the options to choose. We have options everywhere we go.
Yeah, that's what I
Everywhere we
always say.
go.
If you ask any person, not just in Texas, in the world,
No.
one question, I always ask this, and I don't finish the question. Would you like a choice? They won't even have to say of what. The answer is always yes.
Always.
Right?
Yeah.
Just
For
would you
everything.
would you like
For
would you
everything.
like an option?
Anything.
If they say, well, what, it doesn't matter. Would you like an option? No one
Yeah,
is ever
no.
going to
Right.
say, no, I
Absolutely.
don't want an option. I
Absolutely.
don't want a choice. I mean, for whatever. Marriage, would you like to have a choice of who you marry? Yes.
Absolutely.
Would you like an option for where you work?
Yeah.
Yes. Would you like an option for where your child goes to school?
There's no
yes.
debate.
Would you like a choice of which car you're going to drive? Yes. You know, all of these things. So it's really bizarre that we've come, like to your point, we've come into this climate where you know, people play on words and they make everything like the big bad boogeyman.
Yep.
But at the end of the day, it is about kids. And when you're not around young people often, I think it becomes easier and easier to make it more political. You know, when I was looking at those books, almost passed out.
Let's talk about
because,
that.
Yeah, you talk
Can
about.
you give some
Yeah,
examples?
I will tell
Let's
you.
get
You
real
talk
with
about
this.
a school to prison pipeline. There were books, highly violent books that would have absolutely. You talk about these young African American boys having access to that kind of content. Who do you think is going to be the first person to be suspended or expelled when they start acting out rape fantasies that are in childhood books? God, I'm a big anti-human trafficking advocate as well. Books that were teaching kids how to take naked pictures of themselves, upload them on the internet. And here's a quote from one. The internet is a great place to explore your kinky fantasies and to meet strangers. There's all kinds of nice people you can meet on the internet. To research a child has kinky sex fantasies, a book that says porn is a sugary treat. So
And kids sitting there saying, I'm just in the third grade.
Right. And so here's the deal, though. So when those kids read that and the parents don't know what's going on when their behavior changes at home, or you actually go in your child's room and you see them trying to upload naked pictures of themselves meeting a stranger online and they get human trafficked or kidnapped, the parent would have no idea that they were told to do this. We were taught stranger danger. Right?
Yeah.
Yes. And now we have books saying, no, there's all kind of
Stranger's good.
There's all kind of cool strangers you can meet online. Things that were far worse than that. I mean, I explained all these things to people. Some of my colleagues were like, well, they're going to do it anyway. Well, then why are we here? Every law,
Make it right.
I will say this, every law that we pass can be broken.
That's right.
Why are we here? I go, then just go home. Go home. If you believe that every law is going to be broken or that every law will ultimately maybe have no impact, why are you here? I go, that is a ridiculous thing to say. And in fact, they will not. Every child is not doing that. Every child isn't using kids have cell phones, but every child is not using their cell phone to research porn. And particularly they wouldn't if you don't tell them to.
That's right. That's what I was thinking.
And
Why
so
are we
why are you
introducing
encouraging
that?
it? And so
Right.
I said, well, let me ask you a question. I had a colleague, we debated for an hour. She came over to my desk and she was like, well, Representative, I won't say the name, sometimes kids have to lead very adult lives. I go, so what does that mean? What does that mean when it comes to education? Are you telling me that a child who may lead an adult life, which also is not okay, that's why they are a child, it's okay for them to read books about a father committing incest on his daughter and enjoying it? Books about bestiality? Books that when I was trying to read them out loud, the entire caucus took off running and almost passed out and said, like, don't make me listen to it. But it's okay
But
to
it's
read
okay
it
for children.
for children to hear. books that I could never read in a public setting of adults, books that if it were acted out in film, it would be banned, really banned. These aren't banned books, by the way. This was just to put a rating on the books. I want to make that clear to everyone listening. It was not a book ban. This isn't China where the book can't come into the country.
Yeah, but Representative Thierry, I think that you all were even being a little light, just putting a rating on it and putting an age on it. I would ban it because that kind of material is banned for my kids.
Well, that was the rub, that it actually was a label that the vendor actually gets to put on the book. It's to help the librarians know what to order, right? And so, and then we have to use, you talk about words, Angie.
Yeah, words are
What
everything.
if it was called a magazine?
See,
And
words
not a
are
book?
everything.
Is it something that is, anytime something is made of cardboard, I learned, and it has paper in between, it's a free-for-all for kids to have. Apparently, we don't take any measures. We don't look into it. We don't care what's inside as long as we call it a book. But if it were a video, that would be different, right? If it were Pornhub, you would say, oh, well, no, maybe not. If it were a Penthouse magazine, Playboy, I don't even know if they still make those things, but if it were a magazine, they would go, oh, well, no, we're not going to put, these kinds of magazines in schools.
But because
it's called a book, no matter how obscene, no matter how disturbing, no matter how disgusting, we're suddenly saying we don't know how to determine what's appropriate for children. And so speaking up on that, now on that one, at least I was able to get more than 10 folks to kind of come up to join me on that bill. I think it was 12 or 13 folks. So it was somewhat bipartisan.
That is wild that the entire body of the legislature was not standing there behind you going, this cannot be here.
This can't be. Again, politicizing something and pretending that I was told that we were banning books on Black history. No, and what an insult.
Like that's a part of Black history.
Yeah, that's not Black history. A father raping his daughter and enjoying it is not Black history.
Right.
What an insult to Black people.
And I'm insulted that they would even put that in the same category.
Right. What an insult to Black people to say such a thing. And so all of these are the kinds of things that parents want to know about. And we saw around the country, even in our state, parents going to school board meetings and saying, this is awful. Take this out. I don't want my child reading. And again, these are books that are purchased through, I cannot say this enough, taxpayer dollars.
That's my
So
problem.
I've been a lawyer 25 years, we have standing to say this. And so what I want parents to hear from this, just like you made that plea, you have every right to come in and say something. It is your money that bought the book. All this, this iron wall at a lot of schools, that's another thing. A lot of the schools, I suppose when it's a public school, they're like, oh, it's not private. We're not paying. No, I am paying.
Exactly.
Property taxes pay for, our taxpayer dollars pay for it. But there's this us against them. Right. And you're not welcome here kind of. I don't know if you've ever felt that at some of the schools, but I hear it from parents all the time.
Absolutely.
Where
I never accept that in any
I've
of the schools.
even felt it at some of the schools just with other parents. Like you can tell we're so tippy-toeing around, we're always like, be really nice. They might not let you in to drop your child's lunch off today. Like you're almost afraid that they're going to kick you out. And I don't know when that became the norm, this us against them.
You have to ask yourself why that is.
What are they hiding? What are you hiding? Why do you not want parents? Obviously, it's not our job to hang out in the school, but there is this weird, shut up and drop your kid off and pick them back up type of.
Can I make 3 points on that before you go any further? Any parent that will take their children anywhere and never go inside that building, something's wrong. Most of the parents that I've talked to in the past, you don't take your child anywhere, drop them off and leave them there for countless hours for 7, 8, and sometimes 9, depending on extracurriculars, and not go into that building itself. My son's school, I can tell you where the emergency exits are, where the emergency sirens are, where the evacuation plan is. I'm her. I'm that mama. I'm her. And any parent that will allow their kids to go into a school and not know what's in there is a problem.
And do you think they really have an option though? Because I was going to ask you.
Yeah,
I've heard some teachers. No, they have mandated the parents. Remember parent-teacher conferences?
Correct.
They're not in person anymore.
But you know what?
You have to do it online.
You can request them, and here's the thing about this. And I need parents to really get involved and know your parental rights before you take your children to school, and even read the handbook. I have had to correct some directors on the handbook because I read it cover to cover. You got to wonder why, and here's the thing. Before you take your child on a school trip or allow your child to go to a school trip, what do you have to do? Fill out what? A permission slip. And you done put something like this in the schools for my son or my daughter to have access to, and you never ask me permission? Parents, get involved. Parents need to speak up and out of what's going into the school. I know his lunch schedule. I know what he's putting in his mouth because I've seen the lunch schedule for the week. But
you know how to fix this, and you're a great mom, and you pretty much.
I need the mothers to come with me. Don't tell me to go, girl. No. Come with me, girl.
But
I need them to come with me.
I'm gonna give you the answer to a lot of the problems that we're seeing right now, and it's 3 letters: ESA, Education Savings Accounts, because if you don't want me in there to check on my son or my daughter, hey, let's go. Let's go. And let's our money following us.
Can I tell you a story about that, though?
All 4 of us, all 4 of them
are leaving.
Yeah. And that's 4 tuitions you're getting that's going over here. And because they will allow me to go in, and they want me to be there, and they're welcoming me there.
They will remove those pornographic, violent books, and they will be teaching phonics, and they will be ensuring that children master their testing before they are promoted and kicked out after 12th grade. You're exactly right.
And assessing for dyslexia early.
That's right.
You see, they're working. Look, mine are going here. So all ESAs, all my money is following my child. And so because you can keep doing whatever you're doing. I don't have a problem with it because they ain't gonna do it with mine.
Right.
They're going over here and all the money gonna follow them over here. And once the money, if they see 200-300 of them leave from here and go here, I bet you they start doing what they're doing over here. Competition of work.
I think we need to do a good job to the parents and as a benefit to the parents of explaining those topics, because I'm going to tell you, I had a parent talk to me. I've talked to hundreds of parents, and I'll continue to do so. And one of them told me something, and I found this very interesting. And it's not an exception to the rule; it's the norm. She said she was moving her son from a different school. And she went to let the teacher and the principal know that, he will not be back this school year. He's going to be, next school year, he will be going to a different school. The principal came out at that point. By the way, this was her first time meeting him.
The principal
had never met him until she said she was moving her son. So he came out and he said, "Oh, I hate that we're I'm gonna call him Johnny. I hate that that Johnny's moving. I really hate that. He's a great kid. She said, "What makes him great?" He couldn't answer.
He didn't have a clue.
But here's the important part. He said, "I just hate to lose him because, if we lose him, we're going to lose funding for him as well." Thank you for letting me know that it was all about the Benjis.
Exactly.
Thank you for letting me know that it was nothing about him. You didn't ask me whether he was okay. You didn't ask me, was it health related? You didn't ask me, hey, are we missing the mark on your expectations on his educational learning? You didn't ask me any of that. You told me what was important to you. My child is not for sale, is what she told him. He's not for sale.
I'm telling you,
good mama.
That's a good mama.
And you know what?
What else I would have said to him? I'm glad you got the picture, man.
Yeah, I know, right?
I'm glad you figured that out.
You figured it out.
I figured it out already.
So, if it's about the money, I'm gonna move the money. I'm going to move the money.
We don't pay where we have no say.
There you go.
Oh, I love that one.
Right.
See what I'm saying? I cannot pay where I have no say. If I don't have no say, but I have say over here, this is where we're going.
This is where you'll pay.
And that's the argument. That's the argument that we're going to see this legislative session. But the main thing that we have to make sure, and you're right, we do have to educate the parents, but we have to educate the community. Look,
that's right.
one thing about my daddy, my old man, he was a Korean War vet. You know, he didn't talk much, but he said, everything under this roof follow my rules. Mm-hmm. You see, he said, I go out and I work and everything in here belong to me. He said, including you.
He's right.
You belong to me. And he said, you follow these rules, you go to school, you do what you're supposed to do, and you come back and we're gonna get along just fine.
Yeah.
But he said, I control everything under this roof. And I'm that same way. With my 4 kids, all of them named Johnson. Give me that Johnson over that. Hey, that one's mine. That one, that one mine. That one mine.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, I know what their strengths are. I know what their weaknesses are, and I know what their learning styles are. And I'm an educator, so I got a little bit of an advantage. So I'm gonna be looking to see if teaching styles meet learning styles. Because if it don't meet it here, I'm looking for another place.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Because at the end of the day, God gave me those children. God himself gave me those children as my responsibility.
Right.
And it's my job to put them in a situation where they can learn, thrive, and become good citizens and good human beings and good for humanity.
Right.
That's my job.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not the teacher's job, it's not the principal's job, it's my job.
Right.
And so I have to find the right place for them, and the government has to allow me the freedom as a parent to do that. That's what empowering parents is all about. The government have to allow me the freedom, because when I go buy a loaf of bread, since we don't have an income tax income tax in this state, when I go buy a loaf of bread, I'm paying taxes.
Correct.
Right.
It don't matter if I buy it with my food stamp, or I buy it with my cash, or I buy it with my credit card.
It doesn't matter.
I just paid into the system.
Right.
So the system owes me that
They owe
right.
you.
No matter how rich or how poor you are, the system owes us that right to be free enough to put our children where their educational needs are being met.
And I think we need to be, my biggest thing is that we were talking about just being a child advocate, but, to advocate for parents, too, who are not, sometimes we're preaching to the choir, and that's why I make a point to go out in my community, in my district, and hear from people like the grandmother I talk to. A lot of parents are not like us, where they have advanced degrees or just degrees. Mm-hmm. I've met a guy who's a welder, and his wife actually doesn't work because she's trying to stay home to help the kids, but they don't know about all these things we're talking about, and so they would like options for their kids the same way we do. Mm-hmm. So maybe they're not going to go in the school and make all of the demands, because they are counting on his welder taxpayer dollars,
counting on the system
to do the right thing.
Right.
They're counting on that, as they should. Mm-hmm. Right? They're counting on their children to be taught, to be nurtured, to be taken care of, all of those things during that temporary time that you drop them off and place them in their custodial care.
Yeah.
Right. So I think we need to think about that and have people look at it from that lens too. It's not a bunch of, because again, I see the politics of it. Some people think there's just this rabid group of vigilante parents, right, with pitchforks coming to the school, like complaining and trying to overturn the school. There may be some of those are that, but that's not what we're talking about.
Did you guys see me? Did someone see me? I thought I was incognito.
That's what I got the image
my
from.
pitchfork behind my back. So I want folks listening to be clear that from my perspective, that's not the tone and tenor of the real dialogue or the public policy behind all of this, in terms of like reimagining our public school system to make it work for everyone at each level, every single child. Clearly, we cannot. No one wants to dismantle public education.
Absolutely.
What are we going to do? I tell people, I was like, if that were to happen, We're going to see kids on the corner with barrels and suspenders, you know, with a little panhandle with a can begging for a worksheet. Like that doesn't happen in any of the other states. So why would that be the case? We have to have a public school.
I think you hit it. But I think you're hitting the nail on the head.
You have to have balance.
But, you know, really, as a parent, I'm going to be honest with you. As a parent, it's really not my job to fix the school system. But it is my job to make sure that my kid gets the best educational options that fit them. That's my job, and I have. But
is it your expectation that we give you?
Let me just say one other thing, and I should, as an American and as a Texan, have the freedom to do it.
That's right.
You see, you're infringing upon my freedom when you say that I have to lock me into a zip code. And I can't go out of that zip code because I can't afford to go out of that zip code and get the best possible education for my kid, and I'm a taxpayer. So when you infringe upon my freedom, that's when the Constitution says that every American has the right to stand up and fight. No matter whether you black, white, brown, green, purple, or what your color, what your race is, what your religion is. When people infringe upon your right as an American to be free and make choices, to make choices for your children, that's when the fight comes on.
Right.
I heard folks, and this is not just heard. We've talked about this a lot. I think the discussion. I'll say two things. One is about hypocrisy, but the other is there's folks who legitimately will say, "Okay, Dr. Johnson, Richard, I'm not infringing on your right. Make your choice, but make it with your own money." Right? They'll say, you go send your child.
I just paid it when I went and bought some bread.
Right. And so that's the loophole that's missing. People aren't getting that part of it. When they say, well, you know, I had colleagues who said, well, I'm completely against any form, not even charters, or ESAs or anything for private schools, because the public schools are the best option. They gave a litany of reasons why private schools were not good. And I said, well, where does your child attend? Right? Because my child was in the public school, right? Yeah. And he gave a very ritzy private school. Right. Then I went to another and another.
And some of them themselves went to private school.
So their caveat was, but
I pay for it.
And so then I started I did an actual couple of forums in my district on this. And then there were folks that came and said to me, but where did they go to college? They said, I didn't go to college and that person did, and I paid for that. Mm-hmm. I paid for you to go to college if you went to a publicly funded state university. In a way, like if you got any kind of a Pell Grant or anything else, maybe I paid for that. So I think that the bigger discussion again comes into, as taxpayers, there's many buckets of money that we will never see the benefit of. For example, you know, the property taxes. There are people who don't have children, and their taxpayer dollars go to schools. They're like, I don't even have any children, and I don't want to have any. I'm never going to have any. Yeah, do they get theirs back? The school tax. They're like, well, I don't get it back. So it becomes very. Dr. Johnson, how do you have that academic conversation where people don't feel that somebody is stealing from the system, to go there and to let them know that these are all taxpayer dollars that all of us are putting into that we give back? Or do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I do. Well, I was going to say, whenever I hear this all the time as well, and the what always pops in my head is an image of Marie Antoinette, you know, kind of the cartoonish image of big white wig hair. It's just let them eat cake. I mean, so for example, I'm gonna call out one of your colleagues because I am just it's a shocking disconnect. Gene Wu, who
I knew you were gonna say
this man, and he's just basically telling you, just don't be poor. Just don't be poor, and you can go to a better school like my kids. And I will never forget when he posted, because he's talking about, it's the system. My kids are not a system. I actually send my kids to an amazing public charter school, which I love. Mm-hmm. My kids are not a number or a widget in your game. They are not your system. Right. They are my kids. Mm-hmm. They are my kids that I'm responsible for. Mm-hmm. And your child is yours, and your child is yours, and your children are yours. And every parent, and our love, like we talked about transcends. But what he is saying is, just don't be poor.
and then you can,
and if you are poor, and I'm not even talking just what you're working class, you're whatever, but you can't afford the tuition for 2, 3, 4, even one kid. He's saying just don't be poor, and you take what we give you. Mind you, we're sending 40 cents on the dollar out of our classrooms. I want Texans to understand that. The system is rigged, y'all. We send 40 cents on the dollar of your tax dollars out of the system to profiteers and lobbyists, which I'm going to ask you about in just a second. But he was a perfect one, Representative Gene Wing, because he says, well, I had to spend a lot of money to have my kids tutored so they could test into this fancy private school. Again, it's this elitist, I know
and
better than you,
isn't there
I
one
am
public
better
school
than you.
that's good enough?
Right.
You're saying there's not one?
Right, and it's a
that
very
you deem is
elitist
valid.
mentality.
But
So
also, too,
that's it.
everything, the role of government, if you're looking at it from a tax-based perspective, I'm vice chair of the Ways and Means Committee, the tax committee, everything that we do is tax. Most people don't realize we have no revenue in the state without taxes.
That's
Exactly.
Right. So I
That's
tell
what we
people
operate
that.
off
Government,
of.
period.
Right. So I ask people, I said, you understand?
Government, the only money they have is the money that comes out of our
fire.
It all
pocket.
comes from the people.
But nobody even thinks about it that way when we talk about it for example, Medicaid healthcare, which I know Rep. Rue is a fan of expanding. So if you're for Medicaid expansion, that's the government providing healthcare. We could easily say to people, well, I have a job and I have private healthcare and I have Blue Cross Blue Shield.
Right.
Too bad, so sad for you. Why should you have? Why should I pay for your healthcare? And there are people that say that, but that is not typically the position that people would have who are on the side saying they don't want kids to have the same option for education. So I think we have to, I just want to finish this one little thought. What is the difference between taxpayer dollars helping people who are middle class or poor for health care versus education? It goes from the tax base to help low-income people have health care, correct?
But here's the thing. With my 2 older kids, my wife insisted on them going to private school. They went to St. Mary's, then I had some kids went to Amani, right? And I lived in Spring, in a very high-end area, and I was paying huge school taxes. But I had to pay full. No one said to me, because your kids are not in those 2 seats over here, where you're paying these big school taxes, because they're not there, you don't have to pay over here. Because you want a better education for them in a private school, you now have to pay 100% over here and 100% over here. So is that fair to a middle class person who's struggling because they want the best to prepare their children to be in the best possible situation?
Oh, you're saying you didn't get your credit back.
Well, you're not going to get a credit back.
Yeah.
You're going to pay 100% over here and 100% over there. And think about these poor moms. Think about these poor moms in a place where I grew up, and they're saying, I'm going to keep paying taxes over here, and we're going to live poor, but I'm going to do the very best for my kid. Or I know it's against the rules, and I'm not supposed to do this, but I do have a cousin who lives over here. So now my kid is going to be registered over here where my cousin is.
Right.
And I'm going to break this rule because this rule is not good for my kids. And I think if you go back and you look at that movie, The Great Debaters, and the one liner that they had says it says an unjust law is no law at all.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
So if the law is not justice for people, then it's not a good law.
Right. So let's address the elephant in the room. We've said a lot, and I hear you. And the only reason why I'm speaking with the type of passion that I have is because I'm that mom. I'm that mom that goes to work every day, works 8, 9, 10 hours a day, goes home, turns into shift 2, because I'm mom. Mm-hmm. And then sometimes even shift 3, because once put the son to bed, then I go into shift 3 and do work to get me prepped for the next day and things like that. And I speak for those moms that I've spoken with that are punching a clock every day. for the retailers that are out there that even work holidays, for the waitresses and hostesses that are in the restaurant business, for the hotel and restaurant workers out there. I speak for them because I'm her. I've shared our stories.
They might get a break on their tips.
Yeah. You know.
Depends on who wins in November, right?
But let's think about it this way. We're saying a lot of things about having options, and I know why I pulled my son out of the school and took him to a school that could better suit him. It was because the teacher to student ratio was smaller. And then when I feel bad for the parents I left behind that didn't have that choice, that didn't have that option because of their socioeconomical standards and because they couldn't afford. I drive 38 minutes each way to get my son to that school. That is a huge undertaking. And Lord forbid if he forgets his gym bag or forgets, Mom, I forgot. I don't want these shoes. I want the silver shoes, Mom. I want my LeBrons. I want these. If he wants a certain shoe that he just got to have because he can make the jump shot or whatever, I got to go back and bring him back 38 minutes again. Keep going. Every day. I wear it. I do it as a badge of honor. But let's talk about why I had to pull him out in the first place, because there wasn't enough assessments done. There wasn't the student to teacher ratio at that particular school was 31 to 1. So 31 kids and one teacher. And then I'm talking to the teacher, and then the teacher is saying, Miss Thibodeaux, you're right. I can't say it, but will you please say it? These are teachers that feel like they have no voice. So let's address the fact that they see what's going on. That peer-to-peer learning is total crap. My son said and they had it. He do every Friday is spelling test day, and another kid is grading his spelling test. The teacher is supposed to grade the test because the girl that graded his test was checking his words incorrectly and she was getting them wrong. So the peer ain't always right. And then let's put dyslexia into the fold. And you got peer-to-peer learning and with kids that have unique learning disabilities and needs. What do you think is happening to them outside after it's all over? Guess who gets teased for needing that special attention or help? So it's so easy to constantly, if you're constantly hearing negative and constantly hearing you need special help and constantly hearing you're a special case and constantly not having the materials to do it, that school to prison pipeline becomes very real because those 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th graders turn into dropouts later because they're tired of you tearing them down. They're tired of you doing that. So let's address the elephant in the room. They say, well, Miss Thibodeaux, you took him out of this school and you took him to charter school. Charter school is public. I get that. But I took him out of the school that wasn't working for him and put him in the school that was best for him. Right. But guess what? Who's addressing the school and the materials and all the deficiencies they have to get them up to speed? Get them up to par. So yes, that teacher went from 31 to 1. Now it's 30 to 1. So if everybody can have the option to put their kids where they want, eventually that heavy ratio will subside. It won't be as heavy. Eventually.
So they can be more effective.
Well,
you will have a more effective teacher because she's not being pulled so many ways. If just 10 kids went somewhere else that's better suited for them, that can get out. And I used the number 10.
Putting the child first.
Putting the child first. And the reason why I used the number 10 is because when I talked to the parents in my son's classroom when I got ready to move them, 9 of them had similar needs. They just couldn't get out. They couldn't afford to get out. Where are they going to take them? How are they going to get there? I got to be at work at a certain time of the day. I get them to school just in time to get that breakfast and things like that. These are real issues that happen to real working class families. And they can't just at a drop of the dime say, oh, hell no, Angie did that, so I'm going to follow Angie.
That's right.
They can't follow Angie.
I want to address that, and I think you really, the tip of the spear on a lot of this with ESAs will help families who need an out right now, and they can pay for transportation as well as tuition. They're so versatile. They can pay for tutoring. They can pay for co-curriculars within the school. I mean, there's so many things. But the reality about empowering parents, it's why it's the parent empowerment movement, and why each of you, I talk about you being parents, is it's not just about education savings accounts. It's about transparency in the classrooms. Mm-hmm. It's about ensuring every child has a high quality education. It's about respect for the parents, which we've talked about. And it is about the choice. But it's also about empowering teachers. You know, I mentioned this earlier. 40 cents on the dollar goes into our classrooms with teachers. Y'all, the way this system is set up to drive 60 cents on the dollar out to profiteers. We're building $100 million football stadiums for a couple thousand kids. We have our priorities out of whack.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And I think that Representative Thierry can talk a little bit about those lobbyists and those text messages and those phone calls and meetings where people within that system that are helping steer and guide that money out of our classrooms, and how this movement is about saying, parents, we're going to fight together along with teachers and say we want the money in our child's classroom. Mm-hmm. We don't need 15 administrators in one school. We need excellent teachers in the classrooms too, and we need to pay them what they're worth. And that's what this is about as well. Yeah. It's about course correcting a system that has driven off the rails.
Well, you know, and everybody wants, we keep saying, you know, well, the teachers, they have to be compensated. Yeah, they deserve to be better compensated. You know, of course, I voted every session for that, and even increasing their pensions.
But you also voted for more money going to public schools
more money
every session.
Yeah, to increase the basic student allotment.
The money continues to go into the system. But what Mandy is saying, and
what do they use it for?
That's
exactly,
right.
And we have administrators making 2 and 3 times more than the folks who are in the classroom.
Let's talk. I mean, let's just throw the numbers out. So we can say last year we spent $92.4 billion on our public education system for about 5.5 million kids. If we break that down at the per child level, we spent $16,792 per child. Where in the world
did he go?
Is that money?
Mm-hmm. Well, and it's even more frightening when many classrooms, you talk about classrooms, don't even have the basic supplies. School and school supplies.
Teachers are going their own pocket.
I filed a bill. It's called the Teacher Reimbursement Supply Act. Because I filed it multiple sessions in a row, and teachers from across the state came in. I was able to get a hearing on it 2 times, and it was sad. There were teachers that came in and said that they're driving Uber at night because they take money out of pocket. Yep. To purchase supplies for their classrooms. Mm-hmm. So the bill was, to raise awareness on this issue and to get attention and say, well, let's give them $600 extra a year for K through 8. They don't do it as much, obviously, in the high school levels. Mm-hmm. But their teachers are like, I have to go and buy shaving cream and noodles and spaghetti to make my own science experiments because the worksheet calls for it, but the school is not providing the budget to do the science experiments or whatever they're doing that day. And so, the money is not in the classroom as it should be. And so all of these things have to be addressed overall. There's so many pieces to it. That's why I said it's a lot to unpack. But I think our main, I'm a takeaway person, I think our top takeaway, though, is who's responsible for our children? The parents, right, ultimately. And parents have to feel they have a say in their child's education, what they're learning, how they're learning, when they're learning it. All of these things matter. And many are intimidated. They've been pushed out. They've been bullied out. And then we have those who don't even know. So because there's not a lot of transparency, I had to be very aggressive. I will say my daughter was at a great school, but I was in the not knowing club for a while, and it was like, well, read your child's. There's this thing about read the journal. I'm like, I'm not reading her notes.
You.
Yeah, like I appreciate that she took some notes, but she's 9 or she's 10. I'm not going to rely solely on that. And I was kind of told I was weird. I was like, I don't know the word for it in 4th grade, but isn't there a syllabi or something?
Yes.
Right, like in college, like where's? We had those when I was like, y'all are making me sound like a dinosaur. I was like, when was there this big shift where it was optional for the teachers. So then the teacher was like, well, there's different apps that they go on where you're supposed to upload what they're learning that week. But that varies. There's no standard. So depending on if you've got a great teacher, you know what they're working on week by week. Mm-hmm. If you don't, you might not know at all. So you're not able to provide that supplement if you could. And one thing I really did talk about a lot, and Mandy, I'll say this from this side of the community where we've seen the tutoring is really a big issue. We don't talk about that. Mm-hmm. I found, and I don't have a formal study, but I can just say from personal observation, in a lot of African American homes, even middle class homes, and sometimes even more affluent homes, I don't know what it was, but there wasn't a big push on tutoring. If your child is doing well already, or B student, mm-hmm. not getting that extra tutoring that might help for standardized testing, mm-hmm. ACT, SAT. And I think that people miss the mark when they talk about the ESAs, Richard, on that, because some people limit it and say, well, if it's only for tuition, what if they don't have enough to make up the difference? It's not only for that, from what I heard.
No,
and so that's
a
discussion we need to talk about, mm-hmm. because when you go back to saying what people can afford, mm-hmm. of course we have members whose kids are at Kumon
or Sylvan,
Math, Sylvan Learning Center, or they have private tutors at home. Mm-hmm. And that's their money to do that. But if we really are going to talk about equity and leveling the playing field, which is what everybody is saying they want, then why couldn't taxpayer dollars go to help families to use the funding for that? Mm-hmm. So I just wanted to have a full discussion about it so that people really understand what we're talking about here. This isn't about giving $10,000 to someone who makes $2 million a year. Don't you think their child's already in the school of their choice?
Right. Of course.
Like
wealthy people already have school choice.
Right. And they're not waiting around on $10,000.
And these ESAs are prioritized for our low income and special needs students. Yeah. That is the top
Say that
priority.
Part again, because
education savings accounts are prioritized for low income and special needs students. Yeah. Yes, every parent should have access, but those parents that get first access, those parents that are with the most disadvantaged children, our low income and special needs children, they get first bite at that apple. And it's designed because we recognize that those children are the ones that are chronically left behind. They're the ones that end up in our prison system. They're the ones that fail to reach their God-given potential. Yeah. And that's really what this is about, is ensuring that every child in Texas has an opportunity to reach their fullest potential. We are coming up on time.
Okay. Can I just say one
I'm going to give all y'all a chance. I want everybody here. Y'all are amazing. Thank you for being a part of the parent empowerment movement. Thank you for all that you're doing, for shining the light, for speaking truth to power. And I want to give everybody an opportunity to look in that camera and tell the parents of Texas, tell the parents of your district, tell your friends, tell the parents of your communities, tell them what you want them to know so that they are empowered.
Start with me.
Let's start with you.
I just tell parents every day, it's your child. We always say with the blink of an eye, they've grown up. Don't be afraid to stand up for what you know is in the best interest of your child. And when it comes to education, my parents always told me education was the great equalizer. Mm-hmm. It is the one thing that it doesn't matter whether you grew up on this side of the tracks or this side of the tracks. If you had a quality education, it could change the trajectory of your life. So I really want to encourage parents to be vigilant about that. We have come into this era of being very, very passive when it comes to our own children. What they're learning matters. Garbage in, garbage out. And so I really want to, and I said don't raise pitchforks, but maybe you do. Because you don't need to feel so passive and so afraid when it comes to your most prized possession, your child. And then I do want to just give a caveat. I found out today, because we've been talking about this in African American communities, that Jay-Z, he's the CEO of Rock Nation, is supporting choice and option ESAs in Philadelphia, and has put forth lots of funding, or a push for it, so the House there will pass it, because he's seeing what's happening in inner city communities there. And so I think we have to get away from this concept that when African Americans are supporting this, that there's some kind of nefarious thing going on, or it's some kind of sellout conversation. This is something that's going on all around the country. And so Jay-Z himself is saying, look, he knows what he saw in the Bronx. And now he's talking about it too. So I want to let people know to do their research, right? Do your own research. Don't listen. You talked about the talking heads and the hired guns. Social media is great because it's free, but have you ever seen that quote, the picture of Abraham Lincoln, and I'll end with this says, don't believe everything you read on the internet. And it's got Abraham Lincoln says, there you go, right? So you have to do your own research, particularly when it comes to your child. Get involved, and, that's what I would say, just get involved.
Thank you. And Jay-Z, come join us.
Absolutely.
Come fight with us here in Texas.
Come to Austin.
Exactly. We're reaching out to Jay.
Well, I told him Beyonce was at St. Mary's of the Purification.
That's right.
There you go.
So come on back to Houston.
Join the Parent Empowerment Movement.
And it's not
Angie.
just Jay-Z. And first of all,
right.
thank you for having me on the show.
This
was it was motivating. It came at a time when it's been a long year already. We're in month 6, but it's been a long year. So it comes at a time when I needed to hear and see a refreshed and a renewal of people that hear or want to hear what's important to us, what's important to the parents. And as Representative Thierry was saying about Jay-Z and things like that, it was Queen Latifah and Jay-Z that are up on the Northeast side that are getting involved with affordable housing and things of that nature. And so I ask all the parents, what's important to you? Look at what's important to you. And that's just having a nice roof over your head every day, that you can raise your family and have a nice life, live and thrive. And with saying that, that generational wealth building gap. And I live housing all day. I can talk affordable housing all day, but I'm coming to you as a mom because that generation to wealth building tool, having home ownership, is key. And the one thing I teach my son, and he actually can teach a class on it too, is where you put your dollars matter most. It matters most. And look at where we're putting our dollars. You as a taxpayer should be asking all kinds of questions about where you're placing your dollars. I thought we had more time because I was about to tackle that other 60 cents of the dollar, and maybe that's to be continued part 2 coming soon, because I really want you to follow. They talk about us chasing bags all day, chasing the money, chasing that almighty dollar, but know where your money is going, know where your power is, and understand your worth and your value. As far as it comes to a quality education, I'm proud of being able to put my son where he could thrive and where he needed it most. I'm saddened that not only did I leave some parents behind, but they're counting on me to be a voice for the voiceless. And I'm saddened that the teachers that are working 2 jobs to make ends meet, I had to leave them behind, but I promised them one thing, that I would continue the fight and I would continue to speak for them, because they shouldn't have to work 2 jobs just to come to school and be halfway focused on my child's education. I need them 100% focused on it. And to do that, we got to pay our teachers better. We have to make sure they have the health care and the pensions that they need to thrive. And we shouldn't have to call back our retired teachers to come in and help out the schools. But that's what it's coming to. We need to get back to the basics, to where it took a village to raise up a child. And I am that village. I'm trying to work with any mechanism. That's why I'm so proud that you called us for this parent connection piece, because it is powerful. And if parents can understand their power and their worth, it is priceless. I would love the opportunity to have tutoring. I did not know that the funds would go towards tutoring. But for those parents that see me and know me, I'm coming to you, because that was one of our challenges. When we get into good colleges and things like that, it is based on your ACT and SAT scores. It is based on those good scores. And what I learned, the heavy scholarships go to those kids that have had those preparatory trainings and things like that. If I could use just a little bit of those dollars to put into further education. It's the summer now. I would love to, instead of going to a free camp that's a glorified daycare every day, I would love to put Major into some classes where he could thrive on the skills. He loves science. He loves science. He should be over there at some training camp at NASA right now. But those require extra dollars that, you know what, we're in a time where our purse strings are super, super tight. So I want the parents to understand, we hear you. Those are serious fights. I'm that girl next door that has those fights with you. And Mandy, I hope we can continue to talk about these issues because this impacts under that affordable roof. These are the issues that are at the dinner table that impacts the household.
That's right.
So thank you.
Thank you both ladies for being a part of the parent empowerment movement. It's we're sweeping Texas, and we're so glad that you're here. And again, saying the quiet part out loud.
There you go.
Dr. Johnson.
Mandy, thank you for having me on the show and having us on the show, and thank you for all the work that you're doing for parent empowerment and educational freedom. The greatest accomplishment and the greatest achievement that I've ever been able to get under my belt was being a dad. And my greatest investment are my children. And I tell them all the time, too. I said, now, in about 20 years now, I'm going to be looking for an ROI, a return on investment.
Absolutely.
When I can't get around, I'm going to need you guys to help me out. So I'm investing early in your life to make sure that you have the best possible opportunities. One of the greatest things that we have as Americans and as Texans is the ability to be free. And freedom came at a heavy price for America. We fought a civil war for freedom. We fought through the Civil Rights Act for freedom. And we have come to this point now that we need freedom in the most high level place that we can find it in our lives, and that's with making decisions for our children, which is making decisions for our future. And I want to thank you. I want to thank the Governor Abbott, for his fight. He's leading this fight, and he's been just relentless in this fight and in this struggle. His whole team, and of course our family here at Texas Public Policy Foundation. We're a team of happy warriors. We call ourselves happy warriors here at TPPF. We love to get into a fight. That's why we're so happy. and of course, Mandy, for all that you're doing. And I want to thank you ladies, T&T. That's you guys right now.
All right.
It's the French connection. Both French last names from Louisiana.
T&T. So we're looking for great things out of you guys in the struggle, in the movement, and we're looking to get this thing across the finish line next legislative session. But I want to thank all of our listening audience and everybody out there who's joining into this fight. And Mandy will keep you posted on how you can engage better.
Thank you all. Thank you for joining us. Thank you to all of our listeners that are a part of the parent empowerment movement. This was Parent Empowerment with Mandy Drogin, and now you have the power.